All right, guys, what is up? Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark. Tell you what, Chris, if there's one thing I like better, maybe one of the few shows I like better than the final preview of a game show, it is the reaction show. And today, we finally have ball to talk about with South Carolina defeating Virginia Tech 24-11. Very strange score. A little bit of a strange game if you really look at everything that happened. Lots of what I call week oneness going on in this one. Just it's all about surviving, though, I think, when you play a game like this. So we're going to dive into everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between, and what we learned, what does it mean for the big picture, and what really maybe doesn't matter for the big picture. All that and more in today's show. But first, let me tell you about our guy, Clint Hammond, CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. Of course, like we always tell you, been telling you for years, if you're in the market for a home, hit up Clint. If you're not in that market, but maybe you're renting and thinking about one day owning a home, you want to have an idea of what that might look like, you can hit up Clint and go ahead and start coming up with a plan as well. How much am I going to need for a down payment? What would my monthly payment look like for house X, Y, and Z? He can go ahead and run those numbers and get it all sort of into a plan for you. So hit up Clint. I'm sure he was very excited with the Gamecocks win yesterday.
Yep. We're also going to tell you before we get rolling here on the show about our friends over at Ferry Chevrolet. That's ferrychevrolet.com, F-A-I-R-E-Y, ferrychevrolet.com. You can also give them a call, 803-937-4531. So if you're a Gamecock fan out there who's interested in getting a new or used vehicle, make sure you check out the fine folks over at Ferry Chevrolet. They're led by a fourth-generation dealer in Joseph Ferry, family-owned business that's been serving the community since 1926, conveniently located in Orangeburg, just off of I-26. That's right in between Columbia and Charleston. Worth going over there because they're local, they're trustworthy, always transparent. Began right in the state of South Carolina, in St. Matthews, now in Orangeburg, built on honesty, integrity, and a handshake. They still, Wes, operate with those same principles to this day. Again, head on over to ferrychevrolet.com to check out their inventory and get in touch. You can also call them 803-937-4531.
All right, let's dive into this thing, man. So many different ways we can take it. Let's start with Beamer Ball, though, man. How fitting that the biggest game-changing play in this matchup. There was just some symmetry to the fact that, first of all, Virginia Tech makes a special teams mistake that opens the door for South Carolina to force them to re-kick. They do so. You get Bakari Swain with and not take anything away from Bakari. Beautiful return on his part. He was game for that situation, made a lot of guys miss. He even finished the run at the end when it looked like there was maybe a chance he was going to get tackled inside the 10, and did everything right. But if you look at this play, you have, for a game one, man, when everything's just a little bit sloppy, like that was a borderline teach tape, I feel like, just in terms of everybody putting forth effort. Like, there's a lot of talk right now about Alabama and their lack of effort on some plays. This is a special teams play, man. Some people maybe go through the motions on special teams. We know that's really not accepted with this program in Columbia. But to take advantage of that opportunity there with the re-kick, get excellent execution all the way across the board on this play, smart execution, man. It really was the difference in basically having to sweat out. I mean, you're probably in position to where you're either having to get a defensive stop, or the alternative nobody wants, having to have the pressure of drive down to win the game on offense. Instead, you get this just perfectly timed, beautiful punt return for touchdown in the Beamer Bowl, basically. I mean, how fitting was that? But I just still go back to the execution by these guys, man. It was honestly a thing of beauty.
Well, it was a nice punt. First of all, that was the first time both punters for Virginia Tech and South Carolina, the first punts that they'd had in game Mason Love for South Carolina, of course. I'm not going to effort the Virginia Tech punter's name, but he was booming them, Wes. And, Swain had to back up on several of those. He came in, speaking of backup, I mean, obviously he came into this game as the number 2. Jalen Kilgore throughout the week, little bit of a hamstring issue he'd been dealing with. They told him, let's focus you on defense. Vicari, you're going to be up this week. And, of course, had the bobble, Wes, earlier in the game that South Carolina was fortunate. Swain picked it up off of a bounce. Beamer, as soon as Swain came off the sideline, he's loving him up, encouraging him, telling him to stick with it. Talked about that after the game. And then he goes and makes a huge play. But you're right. I mean, it looks like a coach. It looks like you're pushing the right buttons to, hey, got a penalty instead of taking the 5 yards. Let's make him re-kick it. Let's see if something bad happens, right? Shane Beamer mentioned he always uses that Clemson example from, I guess, the 2009 game when they re-kicked to CJ Spiller and he takes it back to the house. So now you're on the other side of that. Do you block the punt? Do they snap it over the head of the punter? Does he shank it, right? Can we return it for a touchdown would be your ultimate, obviously, goal there, and that's what ends up happening. So Shane Beamer, man, I don't know. I was in the stadium, Wes. I don't know how much they showed Beamer on the sideline in the broadcast. I haven't gotten to that part yet. He was going bananas on the sideline. I mean, you could tell how meaningful that was, not just to make that play, but in this arena, in the, the Beamer Bowl, so to speak, making that big play. And it was a big play. We had seen, it was tight. Virginia Tech's kicker, John Love, had made, a 56-yard field goal earlier in the game. So you're starting to do some math. You're going, oh, my gosh. You're trying to avoid the situation where they're kicking to go ahead or win, or you're having to kick or drive down, as you said. Great individual effort by Vicari Swain, for sure. Shows that electric ability that we all knew he had coming in high school. This guy was a standout punt and kick returner, wide receiver, safety, has factored in at corner here at Carolina, but finally gets that chance and has shown us what he could do. But to your point, it looks like a well-coached team when you got guys out there knowing as they're running, hey, Vicari's here, he's got a chance for a big return. And in that moment, having the wherewithal, not just Jaron Willis, but multiple guys. I think there were 2, 3, 4 guys throwing their hands up, not blindside blocking a guy, and letting him finish out that run so that his individual effort and team effort is not wasted. So huge play, big play in the game, obviously, given how that thing went.
Yeah, and the reason I have singled out Jaron is just he had the opportunity to absolutely end. I mean, it would have been 20 years ago a play that gets put on highlight reels for showing physicality in football. He had that perfectly timed, really the play that they have tried to eliminate that used to not be a penalty because it's not a block in the back. It's a block in the front in terms of where the other player is, but in terms of just you don't have to blow that guy up. You really just have to get in the way. And he came flying into the picture, and my immediate instinct was he's about to hammer him. And he did. I mean, I know every single coach probably preaches that, get your hands out of there, get your hands up, get in the way. But to your point, that must have been harped on so much. But dude, even just the initial, I thought Riddick, who was on the broadcast, did a fantastic job of detailing the entire thing, the double team of one gunner right off the bat, and how so they outkicked their coverage, as you said. It was a long kick, which gave Vicari that room to start to operate. But the initial blocking of their gunners, who, we saw the other side of that with Nick Harbor, what you want it to look like when you're covering it, where you get past that initial perimeter block and you have a free run to go. That punt returner is in a bad way when he's having to look up, catches the ball, he gets his bearing, and then you have a guy bearing down on you. The initial blocks on the outside slowed up their gunners quite a bit. And then you have the long punt. I mean, all the things that had to go right for this thing to happen is like a butterfly effect type thing, man. Most coaches in a game one, frankly, are saying, let's avoid bad things. Our guy muffed the punt earlier. Let's take the 5 yards at the end of the return and get the ball back in Sellers' hands. Frankly, if Vakari muffs it again and Virginia Tech recovers, people are going to be saying, "God, that was stupid. Why did you make them re-kick? Why did you have them punt it again?" But I thought that was a great example, one, of confidence in your guys, confidence in your players, two, of putting into action what you preach. They have always preached, we want to be aggressive on special teams. We want to dictate on special teams. And that's yet another example. I feel like, Chris, there's a little bit of talk the last couple of years. Jody took over last year, but even Pete's final year in Columbia, there's a little bit of talk of, hey, the special teams have been good, but everybody's ready for the fakes now. Everybody's kind of not caught up, but they're like, we're not going to let you beat us with special teams anymore. We're going to be ready if you have some shenanigans. They showed yesterday special teams can still turn a game for South Carolina. How different would the Beamer era be without big special teams plays along the way? It's a completely different story.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of what Shane Beamer wanted to make the identity, right? And I think he always puts his money where his mouth is there. His first staff, he's hiring Pete Limbo, and he's not hiring Pete Limbo to be, okay, you're the safeties coach and the special teams coordinator, right? It is Pete Limbo. You are the special teams coordinator. It's your show. That is what you were doing. Same thing, obviously, when he left to take the head coaching job at Buffalo. There were some, you remember, Wes, there were some questions. Hey, will Beamer go in a different direction? Will he split up those duties? Will he hire another defensive coach to put out there, et cetera? No, it's just a special teams coordinator. That's all they do. And then you have Beamer being involved personally as well. So they spend tons of time on it. They don't just say it's important. I would say they spend more time on it than Wes, probably about anybody in the country, if not the most. And when you do that, it does show, and it has created an advantage for them over the years. I thought it was kind of interesting, Wes, and this is kind of getting a little bit general. First drive, Carolina goes down there and scores. And not that at that moment I thought, because I knew South Carolina, or I did not think South Carolina was going to go score on every drive in this game. It was obviously a very encouraging start. But what did we kind of think this team would be going into game one, or maybe even this year? You felt really good, or the best about the offense probably. And then the two sides of the ball that had the most questions were defense and special teams. I thought it was fascinating that now it's just game one. We don't know if this will be the case throughout the year, but for game one, it was the defense and the special teams, along with some big plays from the offense, yes, but defense and special teams that really ended up carrying the day for South Carolina. And I think that makes it, a meaningful win beyond all the emotional part of playing Virginia Tech and all that for Shane Beamer.
Yeah, no doubt. And like I said in the open, I think week one's first and foremost, especially as Wade says here, I love we played an actual good team instead of a guaranteed win to open the season. For different reasons, depending on what type of opponent, you play, you can say, well, like if you just blow a team out, offense looks perfect. You kind of have to say, look at the opponent. You're not going to operate like that every week. On the other hand, when you play a neutral site game, not that I think VT is an amazing team. I do think they're a pretty good team. Like, there are some good pieces on that roster. Drones did not have, like, I know you detailed it earlier, probably the worst game in his career. Certainly statistically it is, but some of that was because of what South Carolina was doing to him. Some of that was, drops here or there, lots of different factors. But week one, man, first and foremost, just survive. Just get to 1-0. We talked about it coming in. there were so many unknowns about what's their offensive scheme, what's their defensive scheme, all these new players for South Carolina, dealing with injuries that stacked up throughout the course of this game. I mean, your cornerback depth was getting strained very early. Your edge depth, if you're South Carolina, was getting strained early. And, there were a lot of elements where you're just saying, get to 1-0 and get back to Columbia and sort of rebound or reset from there. I do wonder, I thought as many big plays as Sellers had, this, like, I grade him on a different level than, most guys out there. Like, he made some Sellers plays. He kept you on the field at times on plays that almost nobody else would. That early 3rd and long on the sideline. I mean, I don't even know how, like, we're used to seeing it, but then you're still like, okay, this is insane. And so demoralizing for a defense, I'm sure. That said, Sellers had like a okay day, solid day, but for his standard, I think we're going to see him play much better. I do wonder a little bit of the indecision in the passing game. My guess is a little bit chalked up to week 1, a little bit chalked up to maybe not knowing what they were going to be defensively from a scheme standpoint. Trying, like, you take the safety, but I'm sure you're down there, you're trying to say, do not force this ball. I can't turn the ball over backed up at my own goal line. But then the indecision ends up, getting you sacked, basically, and giving up the safety. Those things are going to happen. He also, Chris, if you add in a reception on, let's get to Harbor here in a second, on the play in the end zone that appears by all other definitions other than the NCAA's definition to be a touchdown catch, add that to the numbers. There's another drop across the middle, by Nick. There was another drop by receiver where the ball was, I think, a little bit hot and it was contested, but could have been called. Like, the numbers could have looked far different, I feel like, if there were a couple of little things involved there. So all in all, I mean, he graded out well, PFF, solid first game. You saw the Sellers Houdini act at play, but it's not like they made him go run the ball 20 times. They didn't make him go be Superman. We're going to see him take over in some games in the future, much more than I think he kind of even attempted to take over, I think, in this game.
Yeah, you weren't seeing a huge volume of called runs. Certainly there were games last year where the play call was literally, hey, here's a run for Lenoris, and was it his best game from an administration, passing the football standpoint? I don't think so, but I also think he did some really good things, had some really nice throws, and he made some plays where Sellers is going to be Sellers, and I was talking to somebody earlier, Wes, it could be, because I'm sure we'll get a little bit to the offensive line here. When we look at sacks or negative plays where there's pressure on the quarterback, we always immediately go, and sometimes it is the case, we always immediately go, okay, that's on the O-line. But you do have to dive in and say, is it on the O-line? Is there a tight end? Is it back? Sometimes you watch back the tape and say, yeah, they got beat up front, or yeah, they didn't handle that twist or that game that the defensive line ran properly. There were examples of that in this game. But there's also examples where if you're Sellers, you got to get it out a little faster. Is part of that just built into his game where he knows, I'm a Norris Sellers. I can make this guy miss. I can get out of this. Does he hold on to it a little bit longer sometimes because of that? Maybe so. But I do think he's going to continue to get better and better at that. This is game 14 for him as a starter. This is still a player that's young in terms of start playing experience. And because of some of the things that he can do and his incredible talent, I think sometimes we forget that. And, man, we have seen it so many times. His escapability, his lower body strength is unlike anything I've seen, frankly. And when he makes those plays, you still just go, wow, it's incredibly impressive.
For sure, man. All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball a little bit, then we'll come back. Like I said, I want to talk Harbor. We'll talk O-line. I know that's a big topic on everyone's mind. Talk receivers in general, talk running backs in the running game. But we are at minute 20, and we have not uttered the name Fred J.R. Johnson yet, which means we're probably about 20 minutes too late in saying that name. Chris, dude, he was all over the field. What a debut for him. I know he was on the team last year, but for all intents and purposes, this was his debut as a starter and debut as a major contributor to this team. And, man, I'll be honest. So we kind of the whole point of Gamecock Central in our off-season coverage is to give our readers an idea of what could happen, particularly with the progress of different players and what the expectation is for them before they actually go see it on the field and before they hear it from the coaches. And I do think we were ahead of the curve on saying, hey, these linebackers, like there's a lot of excitement in the building. These linebackers are going to be super athletic. These linebackers have as much upside, if not more so, than maybe even the group last year, which has been a big sentence. But then I also, you strive for perfection. I'm kicking myself a little bit. I think at the last second, I personally tried to dampen my expectations on JR just a hair because I reminded myself, look, this is a huge step up from what he was asked to do last year. And I was maybe envisioning, hey, by week 4, week 5, once he settles in, all that athleticism is going to take over, right? And you hope. But I'm going, well, what if the instincts aren't quite there? What if there's a slight hesitation in diagnosing plays? All the other little things that make you a great linebacker. Just being a super freak does not make you a great linebacker. Well, I'm kicking myself for changing my expectations just a little bit because it is one game. He's going to have to do it consistently, but just what a debut, man. In the running game, in the passing game, just was all over the field. We'll get to some of the other backers here in a second as well in the group as a whole, but I feel like we owe JR his own spotlight here and was named co-SEC Defensive Player of the Week for his efforts.
Yeah, and deservedly so. I mean, heck of a debut, led the team in tackles, had the big pick. If the worst thing we're saying is that, man, you should stay in the end zone on that pick. That's a good day, and I think the wide receiver from high school instincts kicked in there, Wes, where he's, let me go ahead and house this one. You're keyed up, but it was a great play. I mean, he did, if you go back and look at that play, he's in exactly the position you want him to be in. It does exactly what you want him to do. And he's just flying around. Everybody's saying it in the comments. I mean, there's no better way to put it than he's just all over the field. I mean, we knew that this guy, from an athletic standpoint, he's a freak. He really is. 6'4", 240, can run sideline to sideline, can play coverage, is physical. And the question is just, how does that translate? To your point, Wes, like in your first game as a starter, in your first game where you're playing a lot of meaningful snaps and he played 60 of them, how is it going to translate? And man, he made Virginia Tech feel him on those, led the team in tackles, had the pick, had a big pass breakup, had a hurry on the quarterback. If you want to, again, we use PFF not as an end all be all, but just as a guide, highest graded defensive player on the team. Just a heck of a day, man. And I think we'll get into the other guys at linebacker and the D-line, but this was not an easy game one for a guy like Fred Johnson or for other guys, because Fred's going into, again, that first game as a starter. You're playing a mobile quarterback who has an arm. You're playing against an offensive scheme that's, new to you, got new players plugged in. And he passed that test with flying colors, I thought.
Yeah, he did, man. The linebacking group as a whole, And actually, really good point here. The Fun Bunch says, I don't remember a linebacker picking off a pass that deep down the field since Sky Moore. Just the spatial awareness, the dexterity, obviously the speed to cover as much ground as he did. He started that. If you go back, he started that play pressed up on the line of scrimmage in the A gap. Carolina is showing like cover zero pressure. The other linebacker, I think it was Sean Murphy on that play. He's in the other A gap. DQ Smith is showing, a blitz look as well. Everybody drops out. I mean, Fred ran like 40 yards almost when you look at the entire distance he went. And just to be able to get your hips around, get your head around, to keep your eyes from bouncing. And, you got to think he was maybe relying a little bit on his pass as a wide receiver going and just making a play on the ball. Like, that was, to me, just a special play. Like you said, you love to see him just go down in the end zone, but that's asking a lot with the excitement of that play. That's something, Fred, 6 games from now, he probably just goes down. Like that. That's a game 1, a week 1 type play. But all in all, man, you just got to give him all the credit in the world. And the other linebackers too. I don't think Sean Murphy quite had his best game. I do think he's going to play a lot and play well for South Carolina. There's some missed tackles, some angles here he'll want back. But the other guy that just flashed, man, to me is our guy J.O., Justin Okoronkwo. I mean, the length, the speed, the heat-seeking missile style of just see ball, go hit ball on a couple of those outside runs that Virginia Tech kept trying. I mean, it matched what we had heard. It matched what we had been told in terms of these guys being able to track down the football and go make plays. These guys are gonna play a lot of good ball for South Carolina this year. I think. I think the big thing for that position just moving forward, can Sean Murphy bounce back, play a little bit better? It is 1 game. Can you get Jaron Willis into the mix to where you can really build out that depth with 4 guys that you feel good about? I know we've been told Clayton White does feel good about all 4 of those guys. So I think that this is a situation where it is what we thought it was, which isn't always the case when you go play other opponents. And I tell you, the position that was a step better for me, Chris, had to be those interior defensive linemen. I thought Nick Barrett, Monkel Goodwine, and then in particular, Gabriel Brown-Luedecke.
Yes.
By the way, Gabe actually had the highest grade PFF on defense.
Oh, yep. There you go. Yeah. Yes. So he was right ahead of JR. That's right. Yep.
He had an 89.9, which is that's PFF doesn't just hand those out, and that's on only 34 snaps, which isn't a ton. It's not nothing, but it's not a ton either. So that's a great day for him, man. He seemed pretty disruptive inside. A lot of those guys were kind of eating double teams a lot and just doing the dirty work you want. We'll see what VT's O-line is. I think they have questions there, frankly, but just from a game 1 for a position that we all agreed might be one of the biggest questions. I really liked what I saw from those guys.
Yeah, that to me was the biggest. Not that I went into the game saying this is going to be a struggle, but they certainly for this game outplayed what I thought in terms of expectations. I thought they were disruptive. Nick Barrett did a really good job on the inside. We had heard he had taken that next step. This is a guy that's coming from being more of he's playing 10 or 15 snaps as a reserve player to now you're a starter. You're going out there and playing a lot more. I thought he did a really good job, particularly against the run, just eating space in there. Brown-Luedecke several times, wrecked some shot on the interior. Troy Pikes got in there, Wes. Was kind of curious how much is he going to play game 1. He's out there. Devontae Miles, another transfer. Several guys as transfers getting their first run. And I thought Goodwine, who started alongside Barrett, did some good things too. This again was a challenge for this group. This front six. Is Virginia Tech the best offensive line you're going to play all season? I don't think so. We're going to find out a lot more about Tech as they go through the schedule. They play Vandy next week. That's one I'll certainly be tuned into, Wes, to see what does Virginia Tech look like. How do they match up against Vandy and vice versa? And I think we'll get a better idea. But I do think they were disruptive. And if you're looking for some evidence, Kyron Drones had, I think we mentioned this earlier, this was his worst game as a college starter, and he's had some good ones. Has he been inconsistent sometimes? Yes, but lowest completion percentage. I realized they had some drops in the game, Wes, and he overthrew a guy on a potential touchdown. They also had some incredible one-on-one catches that a lot of times those balls are not going your way. Mm-hmm. So is that kind of a wash? Does it even out? Kyron Drones, worst completion percentage in a start in his career. Also has never had a game where he went no touchdowns and 2 picks, and his long run was 8 yards. He had 20-something rushing yards. So you can't ask for much more than that, and I think it really started up front with how these guys played.
Yeah, one thing I noticed, Chris, and that I had noted in my final preview for the game is when teams had kept him kind of around that 50% completion percentage number, that typically has meant good things for the other team. He's a guy, he can complete 60, 65%, 70% within a certain game. He just does not do it consistently. So when you keep him at that 50% number, typically that's going to be a good thing for the opponent. And in this case, it was even below that. And I don't know, man. I have always not been a stat head guy, but when you kind of have these quarterbacks that do a lot with their legs and maybe are kind of labeled as run first type guys. And he's got a great arm too, man. Don't get me wrong. He can deliver the football, but typically the more I sort of just study the raw stats, I feel like if you're completing 50% of your passes, even with all the other variables, that's just not a high enough clip, no matter how you get there, to consistently stay on the field enough. You know what I'm saying? You kind of, how many times did they have decent drives, or they would have a big play on a drive, but then they couldn't consistently stay on the field against South Carolina's defense? 50% just does not keep you on the field. If you can complete 60, ideally 65%, then just over time, I feel like your passing game, you're able to stay on the field a little bit more. That may seem like a duh thing, but it just seems like those are the thresholds that really matter. Completing half of your passes just is not sustainable in terms of staying on the field. And God, I feel like we have so many things to hit, man. I don't want to miss certain things. Their receivers, credit to them, like you said, they did have drops, so they had some outstanding plays. I also think for South Carolina secondary, this is a game, there were some not so pretty moments, but I liked the fact on almost all those, you had the one kind of where you just got beat and Virginia Tech missed the throw. But the ones Virginia Tech did hit, Carolina, to me, was in position. They're in phase. The coverage is good. It was just a matter of maybe getting a little bit out of sorts at the very end of the play. Maybe losing your technique a little bit. I don't want to say panicking, but just not staying patient in terms of, Cisse had a great play where he was patient. He even let the ball get into the VT receiver's hands, and then he just pokes it out at the end. The great defenders really just realize it's not a completion until, as we saw with Harbor, you complete, about 10 steps. So I think for the secondary, I saw some very improvable things that I don't think necessarily will be an issue for the rest of the year. I think just very correctable in terms of some of the issues, and also some of those you just tip your cap. That was just a great play by a couple of those receivers.
Yeah, and I think those receivers are good players. I think that might get lost a little bit. I agree. Correctable. If you're out there and you just got your DBs just getting beat over and over consistently, that's when you sound the alarm a little bit more in man coverage and say, ooh, do they have the guys? I think it was more technique, on basically all of those. And I do want to say, I want to reiterate, like, great individual plays that South Carolina could have played better, but yes, you tip your cap because they were still very difficult catches. Virginia Tech had some drops, but they're officially credited with 3. It's not like they dropped 18 passes in this game where you're going, if they would have caught those balls, they're going to score 30 points. South Carolina still made it very, very difficult on them. Did they miss some plays offensively? Sure, but they made some. South Carolina missed some plays offensively, where if things go a little bit differently, they could have scored more points. So I think you could play that game all day. All in all, man, I think you've got to be happy with what you saw defensively. Again, one game. We still have a lot to learn about both teams. But for a game in which you went into it with a concern, they absolutely passed that test. And your best evidence, Wes, the other team didn't get in the end zone. I mean, that's a good day.
No doubt. And the other thing, what did we talk about all in the lead in? Do you know how many people, us included, that I listened to leading up to the game? I listened to some of our guys on 107.5 leading up to the game. I listened to our guy, shout out Tyler Cupp. I know he watches and listens this show a lot. I listened to Chet, Chris Miller. How many people mentioned, hey, can you play clean ball? Can you not turn the football over if you're South Carolina? How about no turnovers from the Gamecocks? And, of course, the 2 big interceptions, especially that early one down in South Carolina territory for Virginia Tech. That's another thing you circle and say, a game in the balance, a tight football game. That probably was the difference. And, Lenoris, frankly, he took a couple of shots. Like, he got hit and, held on to the football. So, it gets lost a little bit in everything else that was happening. But to have the forced turnovers on defense, the big play on special teams, but then not turn the ball over, even if it was ugly at times on offense, you didn't turn the ball over. And that is worth celebrating, I think.
Yeah. And even with that, I do think fair to point out, though, Wes, you had the Swain bobble, you got it back. Sellers did take a big hit where the ball pops loose. I think it was RJ Newsome, falls on it. The ball was not in danger a lot other than that. Sellers had the one high throw that when it was initially thrown, I think he kind of went up to the line, threw it. It was too high. When that ball came out and I saw it was clearly over the receiver's head, I was going, oh, if anybody's in the vicinity, this might be a pick. Overall, the ball security was better, right? You didn't, even when the running backs were carried in, you weren't super concerned about that. And that was a huge point of emphasis this offseason. So did they have some good fortune or just being alert, right? Like Swain, we don't want to just count it as just luck that they recovered those. Like, you got to be on the spot. They were on the spot when the ball popped loose from Sellers when he took that hit. You don't want to see any of that, but you're 100% right that when you have a +2 differential in turnover margin in a close game, that can make a big, big difference for you. And I think it did here.
Yeah, good call. I had memory hold that play. I can see it now, but I had completely forgotten that. There was another – I can see in my head there was another play where it was after the whistle had blown and Trovon Ball diving just to make sure onto a loose ball.
Yep,
so
yep. That's what you want to see. Yeah.
They've got it ingrained, right, that you got to go jump on the ball. But good call. Maybe a little bit of that, how does the ball bounce, luck that we talked about too. But, yeah, certainly 2-0 on the turnovers is a good thing. You also, from a process standpoint, want to continue to clean up those things that you were talking about. Wow, we've been going for a while here. Chris, let's go ahead and tell folks about our friends at Game Time who have come back for a new season here on the podcast. Go check out the Game Time app or just head on over to gametime.co. If you want to go to one of South Carolina's upcoming games and you don't have tickets, I imagine There's going to be a lot of sellouts this year. I know that the season tickets are sold out. I know that there were sellouts all last year. Maybe you missed that initial wave of getting a ticket. You decide you want to go. Hit up our friends at Game Time because they've got a lot of different ways that are going to make this ticket buying experience great for you. One of those ways is zone deals. You can save even more if you choose a section and let Game Time choose your seats. You can look at your seat views so that you know exactly how the view is going to be from your seat. And guess what? They have the lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. If you've never used Game Time before, take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the code OWN3, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase, although terms do apply on that. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today, and shout out to them for being a sponsor of us, for us, here on GC Live.
We're also going to tell everybody about our friends over at Palmetto Golf and Belts. That's palmettogolfing.com. Go there, check out Brandon Cohn's storefront. Custom golf towels, custom golf tees, custom golf gloves, all available in several colors and designs. He's got the cross design. He's got the garnet for South Carolina fans. Got the palmetto tree and moon design. So if you're a golfer, you definitely want to check out Palmetto Golf and Belts at palmettogolfing.com. Our Gamecock Central members on the Insiders Forum are loving the products. He's got some specials that he's running. Gamecock Central subscriber, longtime South Carolina fan. Brandon Cohn, check him out at palmettogolfing.com, Palmetto Golf and Belts. Again, they've got custom golf towels, gloves, tees, and the needlepoint belt. So even if you're not a golfer, you can grab yourself a great needlepoint belt that you can wear to events or just casual, everyday, church, wherever it may be. They're extremely well made, and they're more affordable than a lot of the online options that you're going to find out there. Go check them out. Palmetto Golf and Belts at palmettogolfing.com.
As always, shout out to those wonderful folks for supporting our show. Please give them a chance to earn your business and go support them as well. Chris, before I forget to mention this, let's talk about maybe a couple of other just kind of things that are here nor there that maybe didn't have headlines, but I thought were big and maybe could be big for the future. Special teams other than the big Swain play. We got to see, we had anticipated it may be William Joyce. We had reported that on Gamecock Central. There was some buzz that he might be the guy at kicker. I mean, got to go kick pretty much a chip shot, but at least you were able to get him out there. At least he didn't start his career with a chip shot miss either, which would have been, pretty tough mentally. I feel like Mason Love was fantastic. Nick Harbor made a great play running down there as a gunner on a punt coverage. You had, I'm trying to think, man, I am not through my rewatch of the game. It seemed to me like the kickoff coverage was really good too. I know there in the second half, there was one where they seemed to purposely directionally kick it and had perfect coverage and were able to down them inside the 20. I don't feel like they had any. Were there any even remotely good returns by VT that I'm forgetting?
I don't think so, man.
I don't think they were.
I'm going to make sure here, but I'm not recalling any.
So I'm not saying, hey, the operation is perfect. Like it's going to be great all year, but we talked about it all year, dude. New people everywhere. Snapper, holder, kicker, punter, kick return, punt return, gunners, all this different stuff. I mean, so far so good. Let's put it like that in terms of what you were able to get out of your special teams and the fact that you got the big Swain play, but you also didn't give them one back either. You didn't even it out by allowing a big play or having a big miss either.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just looking here over the book, Wes, just to make sure that we were tracking correctly. So, I mean, Virginia Tech had 2 punt returns for 5 yards. So you'll take that. Mm. Yeah. Carolina had a punt return touchdown. And I think Virginia Tech 4 kickoff returns, 195. Yeah. So, I mean, there wasn't a lot going on. So, yeah, I thought Mason Love punted it well. some of it more directional where you, like you said, you just laid it out, downed it inside is it inside the 10 or almost inside the 10? Inside the 15. I'm almost sure. You didn't. Well, I think what you wanted to avoid, Wes, was, having, again, I said this earlier, having this game come down to a kick, where you're going, okay, on paper, maybe advantage Virginia Tech. They've got a third-year starter kicker with a big leg who statistically has been 91% in his career. He made a 56-yarder in this game. Will there be a game where it does come down to that? I mean, maybe so. You got 11 more games at least this season. Probably going to be some close ones. William Joyce, if he ends up keeping this job, no reason, I'm not saying he won't. No reason to believe otherwise. He's going to have more pressure-packed kicks from a longer distance than what he saw. But I think for game one, you wanted to avoid that, and that's what you did. And so not only did you do everything well that you needed to in the course of the game, you also made a huge play. And I think, if there's one thing that Shane Beamer would take away, and he wasn't really lamenting this, but he pointed out after the game, like, we came pretty close on some kicks. They did to blocking a punt. That's maybe the one thing they'll point out is we would have liked to gotten that one. It's always something you have to worry about, with the South Carolina special teams out there. But overall, it was positive. I look at it similar to defense, where they did some good things and maybe even better than expected for a game one.
It just hit me, yet another decision that went into that punt return for touchdown, deciding, hey, we're going to set up the return instead of trying to block this one. We have, we've seen South Carolina have so much success blocking punts. We see them go after it a lot. So to set up the return, and hey, how about Joe D telling us preseason, I think this was at Birdies with Beamer. He may have said it also at USC Media Day. He said, we're going to be better in the return game. We will be. Like, put it out into the world. We're going to be better. And, I mean, so far, so good on that.
I didn't take long. Yeah,
did not take long at all. I can't get over what a just beautiful play that was all the way around, man. Super special. Let's go back to the offensive side and close it out with some Harbor talk, some receiver talk, and then the O-line, which I know has been a huge discussion in the last, I guess, 20 hours or so after the game. Harbor, he had the one drop. He had the other one that the call just goes against him. But, man, I think you're seeing it, right? Like, you're seeing him come along. Like, you were seeing the progress. We finally saw the deep ball hit that everybody has been praying for the last 3 years. What a great call on that by Shula, by the way. They had a like almost a diamond look in the backfield where it looks like, hey, we're running the football. We're going to pound the ball. We're going to try to ice this thing. We're telling you we're going to run the ball, and we're going to run it right down your throat. And instead, they get the one-on-one matchup on the outside. The safeties are all jammed up, and you just execute it perfectly. Nick runs by the guy. Lenoris throws a beautiful ball. We know he throws a great deep ball with a lot of air under it. And that was just a beautiful play and a great call all the way around, man. But Harbor, I think it was a good game statistically, but it would have popped even more if they give him a different call on the touchdown catch. All of a sudden, you're at 4 catches, 2 touchdowns, 100 plus. I mean, maybe it just flashes a little bit more, but I liked what I saw from him. And he was on the field. I was just looking, I think 56 plays for the offense. He was out there for 50 of them. So that the snap count tells a lot about how the staff feels about a guy.
Yeah, and I think, again, 1 week, Wes, so we'll see how this thing plays out. Could end up being still more of like a by-committee approach as to how the receptions end up being split among this receiver core and tight ends. But I think from what we saw of Harbor in game one, it just lended some validity to the thought that like maybe he could be the leading receiver on this team. Certainly he, playing all but 6 offensive snaps can make you a believer in that. Totally agree with you there. And beyond that, first of all, Jared Brown did not play in the game. Wes looks like he's banged up. We don't have specifics on that. And Beamer will reset the injury report for everybody this week in advance of the SC State game and kind of looking back at this one. So we'll have more. Stay tuned. But JB didn't play. Vendrevious Jacobs was out there. Mazio Bennett was out there. We saw some freshmen, right? We saw, I think, 3, unless I'm missing somebody. We saw B-Rowe. We saw Brian Rowe out there. We saw Donovan Murph, who had his first career catch on a nice ball from Sellers. And we saw Jaden Sellers out there for a couple snaps. And I think we had kind of been tracking that as like the top 3, maybe throw Malik Clark in there, like your top 3 to 4 guys out of that 6-man freshman group that would see time. And that ended up playing out in the game.
Yeah, it did. I thought we might already see a couple more opportunities for those guys, but also, like Wade says, we got to get Bennett more involved. Harbor and Murph, only 2 receivers that caught passes. I think we got to very much remember this is game 1. This is on the, not on the road, but neutral site, real opponent. This is not a game where you could just go out there and, have 90 plays of offense and get everybody involved and go run up the score. And, this newcomer gets to catch 5 balls. That guy gets to catch 4 balls, stuff like that. Carolina only threw 19 passes on offense. So you have, 50, 55 plays on offense. One thing that I don't think I saw mentioned much at all, Virginia Tech, even though they were down in the game, they were being very deliberate at running the play clock down for most of the game. I can think of maybe a time or two they went a little bit more up-tempo. But, third quarter, I think Carolina had 1 possession in the third quarter. It was like Virginia Tech was saying, even though the Carolina offense didn't look great, we're not going to let 16 get hot and limit possessions, frustrate the other team by keeping them from getting a rhythm, stuff like that. So if you throw 19 passes, man, even, the punt return, as amazing of a play it was, that removes 1 more possession that your offense would have had. So that's another handful of plays you could have maybe done something with. I think this receiving core still is going to have a lot of opportunities to show us they are who we have been hearing they can be. I don't really put a ton of stock into, I think it starts this coming week, against SC State. If you told me that Murph, Mazio, B-Rowe, only had, I guess Murph did have a catch, but you told me those guys only had 1 combined catch against SC State, I'm a little bit shocked, honestly.
Yeah.
A little bit. I'm beyond shocked, actually. You tell me that, now, from this game, not really that surprised. I think that's just kind of, frankly, how it played out. You get into win the game mode as opposed to you don't care about how pretty it is or who gets to be happy about their stats. You're saying we're going to go win the game. And so I think that will certainly play out a little bit differently as the year goes on. Fun Bunch mentions Brady Hunt. We undersold Brady in the preseason, I think. I got to wonder, not speculating, but, is Mike Smith a little bit banged up too? Mike Smith did not play a ton. He had the 1 reception. I don't think he played hardly at all in terms of snap count. And Chris, going back to Jared Brown real quick, I swear Jared Brown was out there with the ones in warmups for 1 snap.
That's right.
And then it was Dre Jacobs the rest of the way.
Yep, I think you're right.
He was dressed out. He was in the building. He goes out there for 1 rep in warmups, and then it's Dre Jacobs. So I mean, let's be honest. That typically is the sign that somebody is just is banged up and they're trying to maybe see how it feels or something. But there was a question earlier. Shed Surratt, Beamer confirmed he has been injured. That one, I can say I have been told I do not expect it to be long-term at all. I think you're going to see Shed back in there potentially as early as this upcoming week against SC State. And, let's call it what it is. That was a spot, left guard. There were some moments there that were not pretty at all. And I'm not in panic mode over the O-line. It was very, very uneven. The running game to start the game was non-existent, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was a stretch, man. It looked like they were getting kind of lubed up a little bit. Like there was room to run all of a sudden. Attaway, Faison, I thought when there was room, they both looked great. Yeah, O-line has to continue to gel. They're going to have to get better as the season progresses. I know nobody wants to hear that. And I get it. I get not wanting to hear that.
Yep.
But I think it's just a fact right now.
Well, and I think the question is, there's so many questions still after this game about the offensive line, which of course really works in tandem with the quarterback, the tight ends, the backs, right? Attaway and Faison, to your point, just for a second there, I mean, I think they had about 85 yards between those two after contact, and Faison only had 7 carries. I mean, the overall numbers offensively in terms of plays run were not, it wasn't high. 56 plays? Not a lot of plays out there to be had. But I think those guys gave them some tough runs, gave South Carolina a chance. The offensive line in total, what are the questions still? Well, number one, Virginia Tech looked pretty good to me up front. Again, one of the best defensive lines that South Carolina is going to face this season. I don't think so. But I don't look at that defensive line and say that's a poor defensive line. I don't even think they're an average defensive line. They may end up being above average to pretty good. So I think they had some disruption. I saw several things, Wes, when you look at some of the problems. I think some of it was you're facing a defense that, is throwing some different things at you up front, whether it's the run game, the pass game. Sellers did need to get the ball out more quickly a couple times, for sure. There were also some one-on-one losses. There were also some situations where South Carolina didn't handle things as well up front from a technique and scheme standpoint. So the answer is not just one thing. I think it's all of them. And I think you're right. Like, do you sound the alarm at this point? I know some will. I don't know if you do it given all those factors after game one. And I'm wondering if the whole picture can get better if some of those other things can get solved. But I'm really curious. Left guard, RJ Newsome started. Marky Anderson, actually good to see him get in there, get some extended playing time. I can't remember if the switch was just in the second half, but certainly he was in there in the second half. Marquis was. How much of a factor is Shed Surratt once he comes back? Because remember, there's some legitimate buzz about him potentially starting, dating back to, I think you had it in May, Wes. When he's back and healthy, when does his opportunity come? Probably soon. And if you can stabilize that spot, that might help you a good bit there.
Yeah, can they get anything out of Nick Sharp? Like it's been very quiet there, honestly, frankly. And I know people are going to ask, does Tree get another look inside? He's, competed at about every spot other than center at this point, it seems like. But here's the thing, guys, and I love Tree. I think he's a awesome kid. He's actually one of my favorite interviews. At the same time, Chris, like they've given him chances to go win jobs at multiple spots. So, take that for what you will. But I think Shed, the buzz we heard about this kid all the way back in the spring, and then I would say even exiting the spring more so, tells me he can help you. Now, should you expect him to save the entire O-line as a true freshman game one and just fix everything? No, let's be honest. That's not going to happen. But I think it's going to have to be a slow burn for this group. Can they just get better as the year goes on? And frankly, how much do you turn Sellers loose against certain opponents? I don't think they want Sellers racking up. What does 20 runs a game look like across the course of an entire season? That's a massive number. There will be times, SEC opponents, there will be times that they're going to say, look, we got to just ride the horse at this point. We got to get Sellers heavily, heavily involved. That will spark the running game a little bit more as well. Again, not making excuses. There were some times where it was pretty daggum ugly. At the same time, Chris, Attaway finishes 14 carries for 60 yards. That's 4.3 yards a clip. Not great because there were times where he got just hit before he could even get going. Faison, 7 for 40, 5.7 yards a carry. Those aren't great numbers overall, but those are not just, hey, we had no success running the ball numbers. Your rushing totals really get just kind of off because college football counts all those sacks and all those losses against your rushing total and makes it look really bad. So I don't know, man. We'll see. Certainly lots to still sort through, but we got 1/12 of our answers already.
Yes, a lot more to learn. And, no disrespect to SC State. I don't think we'll learn a whole heck of a lot about South Carolina again next week, unless there's some areas where they really struggle. And then you go, okay, we need to reassess this thing. I'm intrigued, again, by Virginia Tech playing Vandy next week. Like, how do those teams match up? We're going to continue learning more and more about both these teams. A lot of hot takes after week one. Some of them valid. Some of them probably not so valid. But overall, man, a good win. Look, you got out of there for South Carolina with a win. It was close at many points, but it wasn't a squeaker where you're down to the last minute or so. And you get a double-digit win against a Power 4 opponent to open the season and learn some things in a good game. That's all you can ask for.
How about Lenora Sellers giving a game ball to Frank Beamer after the game?
Man. That was awesome. Frank Beamer, by the way, did the invocation before the game. That was amazing. Really cool to see him up there doing that. He did a great job. I know that meant a lot. Shane Beamer reposted that on Twitter X about Lenoris giving Frank the game ball. That was great stuff.
Just speaks to who Lenora Sellers is, man. We've always known, great kid, great family, but something about that one just kind of hit me. Like that's pretty special. Didn't look like anybody prompted him or told him or anything. He just went over there and did it on his own. Just pretty special, man. So, all right, we're at over an hour here. We're going to get out of here. And, man, we'll be back later on this week. We're in it now, right? We're in the thick. We're in it's here. It's going to fly by. So appreciate y'all for being here with us every single step of the way. And I want to encourage everybody, come check us out on GamecockCentral.com as well. We, of course, do these shows a couple times a week. But if you want all the day-to-day, all the nitty-gritty, the reactions, the analysis, the interaction, come on over to Gamecock Central. If you're not a subscriber, you can get on there your first week for $1. And we have a great deal still going on that the value is better than it's ever been. And Chris, On3 just hired Chris Lowe as well.
They're on a legendary run, man.
They're on a heater right now. As the
they're
kids
on
say.
a heater, big time.
I mean, is there a better SEC reporter legend than Chris Lowe? Like, this guy has the pulse of everything in SEC country. And, distribution deal with Josh Pate. Chris Lowe is straight up hired, college football. Like, he is with On3 now, college football reporter. And, of course, you got Pete Nakos. You got the recruiting guys. You got Ross Dellinger doing some work with us now as well, in addition to his Yahoo Sports content. All that is included with your Gamecock Central /On3 membership. So come on over and join us. Wade wants to know time of live show this season. Wade, be on the lookout, man. We're going to try to do these in the mornings on Mondays so that you get a quicker reaction. Of course, with yesterday being a Sunday game, it just made sense to do a 2 o'clocker today. Friday afternoon, I can guarantee, or Thursday afternoon, I can guarantee you is when our kind of final previews for that upcoming game will be. And then on Monday mornings, we'll let you know an exact time on that is when we will try to do what this show is, which is the reaction we're going to do every single week. Kendall and Jack will have some stuff for you guys in between all that. So, all right, y'all, appreciate it. As always, he is Chris. I am Wes. This has been fun. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll be back here very, very soon on the Gamecock Central YouTube page and all the major podcast platforms. He's Chris. I'm Wes. We'll see you soon.